तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम गुरु ब्रह्मा गुरु विष्णु गुरुदेवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। समस्त जन कल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। Hari Om and salutations to all. So our topic for today is, does God control? How many of you believe that you came here by your choice? How many believe that you came because you were destined to come here? And how many believe that your choice was also destined? So this question is always there. Do we have free will or does God control everything? And that question keeps coming many times in our mind. And there is a lot of confusion about it. Especially when things don't go right, then the mind always thinks God is doing something, playing some mischief. But when things go right, that question also doesn't come. It's all my choice. So, how do we understand this? When do we know? How do we know whether there is a choice, whether there is no choice, or there is a combination? What is the situation? To understand this, we need to understand what we call as karma. In science, we call it as cause and effect. Law of karma in spirituality is cause and effect in science. So, what exactly is karma? Today, karma is an official word even in the English dictionary. So, before we go into this understanding of laws of karma, a few questions. You have to answer in yes or no. Any movement is called karma? Any movement? In physics, that's the definition of work. But any movement, let us see whether that is called karma or not. If I sit and think, is it karma? Yes. So karma is not limited to doing anything at the physical level. Sitting and thinking also is karma. If I feel angry towards someone, is it karma? Yes. In daily life, unknowingly I destroy so many living organisms. Is that karma? Yes. Think. If I don't do anything but instigate someone to do something, is it my karma? Yes. In sleep I kick my neighbor, is it karma? So many various aspects are there to karma. I have just put down a few. It's not so simple that if I do something it is karma, if I don't do something it is not karma. So to understand karma, there is a beautiful equation that we have that is called karma is anything done with the body, mind and intellect. With body or mind or intellect. With an intention and with a sense of doership. This is very important to understand. Anything just done by the body doesn't become karma. Intention is very crucial. And also that it is my karma. For that the doership must be there, that I am doing it. So the conscious awareness has to be there that I am doing this karma. So we say that the intention determines the quality of karma. A doctor operates on somebody, and in case the patient passes on, the intention is not to kill them. So the karma is not called as a negative karma or a wrong karma. So the intention matters a lot. And also whether that person has done it or not, with the sense of doership. So if I have no sense of doership and those karmas I have done, like in this state of sleep, I kick my neighbor, there is no conscious sense of doership there. So there is no karma that gets added. It's another matter that neighbor may feel that you are doing it intentionally but pretending that you are not, and may give you back. It is said, if you want your wife to pay attention to what you are talking, talk in sleep. She will pay enough attention. So the point is that you can apply it to spouse, not wife only. So the point is that if there is an intention and there is a conscious sense of doership, then that karma is considered as my karma. And so if we revisit those questions, any movement is not called as karma. So many movements are happening. Even planets are moving, fan is moving, so many things move. Any movement is not called as just karma. In this context where we are discussing, karma is with intention and with doership. So if I sit and think, yes, it is a karma. I feel anger, it is a karma. In daily life, unknowingly I destroy many living beings, is not my karma. Because there is no conscious sense of doership there. And where I am as though not doing anything externally, but inside I have thought something and I am instigating somebody else. Again, that is my karma. Because I am telling somebody, I am instigating somebody to do something. So the karma originated in my mind. Maybe action somebody else has done. And in sleep, if I do something unknowingly, because doership is not there, it is not my karma. So if once we understand this, we understand that karma is cause and effect, and karma phala is the result. Karma is the cause, karma phala is the result. And this cause and effect applies everywhere. It is a universal law. Our whole life actually is an expression of karma. We are born because of karma, and while we are living, we are constantly doing karma, and we are creating new karma for our future manifestations. Gurudev used to say that action is the signature of life. That as long as we are alive, all of us have to act. Actions end only in the grave. And even there he used to say that, that even if you stop acting, you make everybody else very active around you. So actions don't stop. Our whole life is an expression of karma. And so very important for us to know what is this karma and what is the connection of the Lord in that. Do we have free will in doing this karma, or is it that everything is controlled? So here, once we understand this, we understand that karma is a universal law applicable to everyone, whether somebody knows it or not. Just like any other external law, whether it is law of gravity or law of motion or any other law externally, it is applicable to all. The earlier we know, the better we tune up ourselves, that's all. Ignorance of the law is no excuse, all of us know that. And so better it is we learn. So now what are these laws of karma? There are 6 laws of karma. First law is what we already saw. Anything done with the sense of doership with my body, mind and intellect. And generally the motivation is I want to become happy, so I do my actions. So that first law says that every action will produce result. Science also says that. Action must have an equal and opposite reaction. There is no action that cannot produce a result. The result may not come now, but if I believe that just because the result did not come now, that the result will not come, then it is illogical. Every karma will produce a karma phala. Every cause, every action will give a result. All of us agree on that. It is very important to understand and come to a logical thought process in this, because otherwise we start believing in random things. And we saw on the first day that randomness is not what we see in the whole creation. We see a lot of order, and there is an operation of cause and effect. And so every karma will give a result. And now, when we analyze the definition of karma, we saw that it is intention and doership, which are very important. So when we see so many life forms which are there, we find that only when we come to the human birth, there is self-awareness. Till the human birth, there is no self-awareness. So action is happening, but it is not happening consciously. And it is happening through nature and through instinct. And so in Vedanta we always say that from the unicellular till the first human birth, the actions happen by the instinct of nature. A fish does not consciously feel that I must evolve to become a amphibian or from amphibian to a reptile. There is no conscious awareness that I have lived as a fish for so many years, now it's okay, now let me come into amphibian. No, nature pushes. It keeps evolving. So the life forms, that's why they take millions and millions of years to evolve. But when we come to the human body, the human birth has this special gift which we call as the intellect or the buddhi, which has the capacity for self-awareness, where I am aware that I am a human being. An animal is aware instinctively, not intelligently. An animal also can get trained. An animal also feels a lot of emotions. So animal also exhibits a lot of intelligence, no doubt, but it is not conscious, it is not aware. And its awareness is limited to instinct, so it will remain in a herd, it will remain in a group, it knows instinctively what to eat, what not to eat. It doesn't make conscious choice. But a human being makes conscious choice. And so from the unicellular till the first human birth, whatever karma one has done is not technically called as karma. One is evolving. From that first human birth onwards, whatever karmas we do, they are counted as karma. Because there is sense of doership which has come. And if we believe that we have evolved, then one explains, one understands that there are lower instincts and one is not aware of that freedom and choice that one has. So one may continue to behave the way one has behaved for millions of years. So one continues to behave in an instinctive way, expressing the lower impulses and lower urges. It takes a lot of time to refine. That's why Gurudev used to say, a beautiful concept in his very first book called Kindle Life. He made a whole scheme of study so that we get introduced to spirituality in a very systematic way. In that the first book is Kindle Life. And it introduces fundamental concepts of Vedanta to all of us. In that he says that just because one is born as a human does not mean that one is living a human life. There are stone men who are born in a human body but live like stone. They just exist. Then there are plant men, they survive, manage to do something and survive through life. Then there are animal men. They express emotions, they live at impulsive level, they grow. So stone men, plant men, animal men. Then comes man. That person becomes aware that I am a human being and I have a free will, I have choice, I can choose. So I can do something, I can not do something, I can choose to do something else totally in a different way. Right now also you and I have a choice. Somebody may be able to listen very attentively. That is one choice. Somebody may say that such a nice atmosphere, lovely to sleep. Sleep. Somebody may have a skeptic attitude. Anything. Each one has their own choice. Every moment we have a choice. And so when a person becomes aware and that sense of doership has started, then one person starts exercising that choice. And so one says that over many human births we have done many karmas. May not be with a conscious sense of doership, but just because we have that self-awareness and that buddhi is given to us, The karma account starts from there. Till then the karma account doesn't start. And there we say that countless actions which we have done, all of them have not given the fruits, given the result in that very life. So there is a concept of total bundle of karma which we have not experienced the results of. That is called sanchit karma. In Sanskrit, chit, chi, chinoti means to collect. Sanchit means that which is collected very well. Collected meaning what? All that karma which I have done, for which I have not yet experienced the result, that is lying in my bank. It has not, what we call, matured. Like a fixed deposit, it is there. It is there. It is not yet matured. Time has not come for it. It will mature at an appropriate time. And so this total bundle of karma is what is my actual wealth. Now, that is the first law. So every action will produce a result. And that result nobody can escape. So when I understand this, that whatever action I do, it is going to produce a result, I have to become responsible for my action. Result may not come immediately. So the second law says that the results are nothing but action itself in another form. Again, easy to understand. Effect is nothing but cause itself in another form. The pot is nothing but mud in another form. The examination marks are nothing but what I write in another form. Effect is nothing but cause in another form. And so when we understand this, Gita always emphasizes that because the effect is cause in another form, action itself is the cause for the result. Focus on the action. So the application is that let me focus on the action, the result will take care of itself. Very famous shloka of the Gita is Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. That you have only a right to action, not to the result, is what generally people translate it as. Because the word adhikara is translated as right. In Hindi it means right. But adhikara literally means qualification. In Sanskrit, adhikara means qualification. That I am qualified for certain thing, like voting. I have to become 18 years old, then I qualify for voting. Somewhere I read, what is democracy? Democracy is a system where the people freely choose their own persecutors. That is democracy. Another place they define democracy as it is an expression of collective wisdom of individual ignorance. That is democracy. I am not saying we should not have democracy, just a PJ somewhere. So point is that qualification. That what is the qualification? So we as human beings have a qualification to act, and that's in our control, that we can choose how to act. But the results are not in our grasp. There are so many factors that are affecting the result. So the word adhikara there means that we have a qualification to act, we have no control over the result. It doesn't mean that don't expect a result. That's why many people think it's an impractical philosophy. How can somebody work without expecting a result? The person who gave this philosophy, Shri Krishna, did he not expect a specific result? That dharma must be protected. So it is not that don't expect the result. All it says is don't be attached to that result. Don't have anxiety for the result. Focus on the action. You expect a result and work hard, focusing all the energies on the action. Today in the management world they speak about that. Be process oriented, not just result oriented. And if at every step I control the quality, I will have an end product which is a quality product. So be process oriented. So action is to be done, focused upon. Result will take care because action in another form is the result. So results are nothing but action itself in another form. And the third law is that results are governed by time and cosmic laws. that every result need not come immediately. Very beautiful example Gurudev used to give is there is a field where a farmer sows. So he sows a, let's say, a coconut tree, and somewhere he sows a mango, and somewhere he sows a tomato, and somewhere a karela. And it's same ground, so soil is the same, water, sunlight, manure, protection, everything is good. But will all of them give results at the same time? The fruit will come at different times. In the same way, the karmas may be done by people in the same life, or even same people. I mean, some people do it together. But not necessarily that everybody will get the result instantly or at the same time. The result can come at any time. And that is very good, because if the results were not governed by time and cosmic laws, just imagine the chaos that happens. Now India-Pakistan match is going to happen on Sunday. Now, both the teams want to win. If the result is not governed by time and the cosmic laws, then no result will come out, because both want to win. And we all should do our prayers, because Indian team desperately needs, I think. They are down under, literally. So the point is, when the match is there or any such action is happening, the result is not going to come instantly as the person wanted. It is governed by a lot of factors, external factors, internal factors. So the results are governed by time, and they are also governed by cosmic laws. By cosmic laws, what do we mean? Just like there are laws in the external world, and one has to follow those laws. One can't say that, no, I don't believe in all these laws. Then one will face the consequence. From a running bus, let us say you get down and you say, I don't believe in this law of motion. I am not going to run in the same direction as the bus. I am going to stand. Then what will happen? One will fall. And one is embarrassed, saying, no, I was not doing anything. I was doing Sashtang Dandavat Namaskar. That's just an excuse. So point is that if I know the laws and I follow it, that is great. If I don't know, I should find out. Because there are these laws externally and internally, and they all will apply. So external laws are all this gravity and motion, and so many other laws externally are there. And there is an internal law, which is the ethics and the morals. That if I expect people to be loving to me, I need to be loving. If I expect that people should respect, I should respect. People should be honest, I should be honest. Ethics and morality are not followed for the sake of society actually. They are followed for our own sake. And one may say that these are all man-made ethics. Of course they are. One may say that they are written in the scripture, and if you don't follow this, then you will face sin and you will face suffering. That is the concept which is there earlier. Maybe even enforced today by in some places in society. But the maturity of a human being is to understand that how sensitive can we be when we start following ethics, how our own potential manifests, how much there is more peace in our own heart, our own mind is so much more happier. So I start following the laws, internal and external, both, because the results are governed by them. And nobody can escape those laws. So the application of this is that we need to understand both these aspects, that results are governed by time. So one is, let there be patience in our life, that results will come. Nobody can escape the result. We lose our patience, and one of the reasons why we compromise is that because we don't see results coming immediately sometimes, so we feel that they may not even come. But it doesn't happen like that. Result will come, because the first law says that the results, every action will produce a result. And also the cosmic laws, that by cosmic laws the results are going to come. So I need to study and understand these cosmic laws. And what are these cosmic laws? Internal, external. There have been great scientists who have done research for the external cosmic laws, and they have made us aware of them. Same way the rishis, they are called as the subjective scientists who have done their research, who have done, and they have written down as though what was revealed to them. And in our culture there is a very beautiful concept called Shruti and Smriti. So Shruti are the eternal principles which remain constant throughout the creation. But Smriti is the adaptation of those for the society at that particular point in time, how to live. So there are many Smritis, Manu Smriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti, Parashar Smriti, like that, there are many of them. Each of them have given the morals and ethics, how one can live a more harmonious life suited to those times. And one of the beauties of Hindu culture is because it has adapted itself throughout time, it continues to survive even now. And it should adapt even today. Adaptation is a very important concept even in science according to Darwin. Survival of the fittest is one aspect and adaptation is another. A species which does not adapt will become extinct. So one of the evolutionists said that also, that if your God is not evolving, your God is an endangered species. Meaning God doesn't need to evolve, but our representation of God and our understanding of God, that has to evolve in my thinking. So I need to study these laws, subjective, objective, both these. Now what is the role of the Lord in this whole thing? It's a very beautiful role is that the cosmic intelligence which made the laws, which enforces the laws, is called as God. And how the enforcement happens? Enforcement doesn't happen as a dictator that you should do this, if you don't do this you will suffer. Enforcement happens through free will. In nature there is no free will, so anyway the animal is compelled to live the way it is living instinctively. With a limited sense of freedom is there. But in the human life there is a freedom. And once that human birth happens, then there's complete choice which we have. And so the cosmic intelligence doesn't interfere in each and every action of ours. So the Lord does not do micromanagement. He has set a system and that system keeps going. And according to the system the laws come. According to the laws the results keep coming to us. So these laws, when they are created and they are functioning systematically, that's why when Einstein said that it is incomprehensible why everything is so comprehensible. That there is so much of system and order and there you can see. So the enforcement happens in the presence of the Lord. The system is functioning. Now beauty of this concept also here is that the Lord is, in Vedanta we call him as Karma Phala Data, the giver of fruits of action, not individually but as the cosmic intelligence who has made the laws and the system keeps giving the results. Anybody who does that action will get a specific result. There is no partiality involved in this. If a devotee says that I am going to jump from the 15th floor but because I am devotee I should not fall down, it will not work. He will also fall down. If he thinks that he will not fall and he goes up, first he will fall down, then he will go up. So the partiality is not there anywhere. So it is not that if somebody goes to a temple and prays and has some special concession and exception and then somebody else who doesn't have. No. So the laws function in the same way, whether external or internal. So the Lord says that Samoham Sarva Bhuteshu Name Dveshyosti Na Priya. There is nobody who is extra dear to me or I hate anybody else. Everyone is equal. Samoham Sarva Bhuteshu. And in fact Gurudev used to say something very interesting. He said that because the Lord has created this system, it is that free will that he has given to the human being, it is such that Bhagwan actually acts as our contractor. And we are the architects of our life and we are giving the blueprint of our life through the thoughts, desires that we have. So he merely executes that. He's only a contractor executing the blueprint. Because I have the freedom to think. I have the freedom to feel. I have the freedom of my faith. I have the freedom of my belief. All those freedoms that I have, how I use it, the Lord is only executing. It is His job to give me that right environment. Right now, if we are sitting here, some of us made the choice and we have come here. How is this experience also happening? This coming together is happening because of the cosmic intelligence. Each one's karma is bringing us together here, and that's why we are having this experience right now. This entire place, this entire experience, each one of you are here. If all of you are not there, no use of my coming. If all of you are there and I am not there, again there is a difficulty. What is that intelligence which brings all of us together? Each one has thought. We may say that it is an organization which has organized, a few people have come together, but if each individual has not thought it, and if each individual did not make it possible to come, this experience won't happen. And how did that happen for that each individual to be able to come? Cosmic laws bring people together. The Lord brings people together according to their own karma. So many things would have happened that so many people would have thought that I want to be here, may not have been here. So that which brings us together, that's the job of Ishvara. Ishvara means the totality. Yesterday we saw. All the individuals put together, and much more than that is the Lord. So all the individuals put together, each one's thought collectively gives us this experience. And that collective consciousness is what we call as the Lord or the Ishvara. And in science they have that very unique experiment also. You know, they did an experiment that they took some monkeys from Africa and they took them to America. And there they changed some of their genes. And when they changed some of their genes, some of their behavior patterns started changing. And what they found interesting is they are far, far away, these monkeys in Africa and in America. And after a few years, they found that those monkeys in Africa are exhibiting those same traits which these monkeys in America were having. And the conclusion which they had is that there is something called a universal monkey consciousness. You can do research, you will find this is a documented research. In quantum physics also now speaks about it, non-local communication. They are not physically connected. They are not near each other. How did that happen? So the subtle bodies of all are connected. The minds of all are connected. And hence, those who understand this concept very well, understand that the free will is there in all of us and the environment is given to us by the Lord. That's the role of the Lord. That having given us the free will, the laws keep functioning and the laws are getting enforced and they keep bringing us together. There is no personal interference there, and hence the Lord does not do micromanagement. Otherwise, many times we feel, there was one girl who was coming to our class. Saturday morning we used to have a youth class, early morning, 7 o'clock. 7 to 8 we used to have a class. And one day that girl could not come to the class and she was standing at 6:30 outside her house and there was no taxi which was coming. So finally when the class got over, etc., in the next class I asked her, that, what happened, you didn't come last class? He said, God didn't want me to come. I said, why? Because if God wanted me to come, taxi would have come. God didn't want me to come. Now we see, that's micromanagement, unnecessarily. God is not doing that micromanagement. That God wanted you to do this, so this happened. God didn't want to do this, so then this did not happen. It's my choice and my karma. If the taxi did not come, I could have chosen to do something else and come there. So, we don't have to think that God is doing this micromanagement. So, when we apply this third law, we understand that some of the actions which we have done from the past, this whole total bundle of karma, some of those actions are ready to give me result. because results are governed by time and cosmic laws. So when these results are ready to give, and when these karmas are ready to give me the results, to experience those results, we take a specific form. And that can be any form, a human form or any other form also, depending on what type of karma it is. There are some people who believe once a human, always a human. That is not true. One can go anywhere. In evolution, one may have come to the first human birth, but after that, one can go anywhere. It's huge. 84 million species are there in this. In spirituality, we say 84 lakh species. Sorry. 84 lakh species are there. Science may have some different number. One can go into any of that to experience one's own karma. And so to experience a certain karma, which we have come, we have to take human birth here. I am going to stick to specifically human birth. That is called the destiny of that person. So destiny is not something written by God. Gurudev used to say that God has better things to do than write dirty lines on your forehead. It is your own karma. Yesterday's karma is my today's destiny. So my past karma is my destiny. So I cannot blame anybody. I am responsible for my own karma. Whatever I am right now is only because of who I am. What karma I have done, sorry. So those who understand this, they take charge of their lives. They will never blame somebody else. That if I am here and I am experiencing something, it is only because I have done some karma to go through that. The main responsibility is mine. There may be additional other karmic factors where I have been brought together in certain relationships with certain people, going through certain experiences. That is different. But when I am here, the main responsibility is mine. So the fate or destiny is not something written by some God sitting up there, but it is here right now. I am experiencing my own past karma. And so when we apply these laws, we have chosen our environment, we have chosen our parents, we have chosen everything. We cannot blame anybody. One of the reasons why people don't come to spirituality is this, because the ball comes in their court. That we are what we are because of our own karma. Nobody can be blamed. Otherwise we blame enough and more people. That why are you like this? You know what to do. My mother-in-law doesn't love me. My boss is not promoting me. I am born in India. So many reasons. And Gurudev used to say there is one special reason that we have, which nobody else has in the whole world. And that is that Shani is not in the right position. Because of that planet, now I am suffering. So everybody else except me is the cause of what I am going through. Vedanta says no. If we understand law of karma, we take charge of our life. But I am responsible for my life. For whatever I am doing, it is mainly my karma. Additional factors may be there, other relationships and other people, and those things do come together, collective karma. So one is to take charge of my life. Second is to study the scriptures and to understand what are the laws which are governing the internal world. Just like we study science, we have to study a subjective science also. That what are the laws which govern the internal world, so that I understand and I align myself. So 3 laws we saw so far. Law number 1, every action will produce a result. Law number 2, results are nothing but action in another form. Law number 3, results are governed by time and cosmic laws. 4th, the doer is the experiencer of the result. No one can escape the karma. If I see that loss, the results have not come now, and if I feel I have escaped, it doesn't work. I am going through right now. Why is somebody born specially challenged and why is somebody born specially capable? Somebody is rich, somebody is poor. If we feel that there is no cause behind it and it just randomly they are born, there is a difficulty in thinking. Cause and effect functions. So everyone goes through the karma, what they have done. Just to experience the result, they take specific form. So doer of the karma is the experiencer of the result. No one can escape that karma. So we say that one can escape the judiciary, one may escape the bureaucracy, one may escape the police, the CBI, but one may never escape law of karma. And we see also in life, so many things happen where people are going through what they go through. Sometimes we don't know the apparent causes. Sometimes the result comes after so many years in the same life. So many, especially in the case of judiciary in our country, that happens. Something which you would have done in 1991 and filed some case, and the result will come now in 2014 or 2018. It takes time maybe, but the results come. You may say, but what about those who are not getting that result? Human system may have a flaw, but the karma system doesn't have any flaw. The result will come. Nobody can escape that result. In the scripture, there is one example for that. In daily life also, you may have lots of examples. I am going to give you one scriptural example. Is Bhishma, when he is lying on the bed of arrows, he asks Shri Krishna that what have I done to deserve this sort of pain? That my whole body is completely destroyed. I am on the bed of arrows. They have pierced me throughout. So what is it that have I done to deserve this kind of a thing? And there Krishna replies that you go back to your lives and find out, you will find one cause. So he goes back 69 lives behind. And if we thought past life regression is some new modern fashion, it is not. There are techniques. Many other cultures also, they have known about past life regression. So he went back and he didn't find any reason. Came back. And he asked Sri Krishna, I went 69 lives behind, I couldn't find the reason. Can you please tell me? So he said, go back one more life. Went back. And there he found that he was a small tribal boy. And after taking bath in a lake, he had come out and there was a small insect which was there on a bush. He took that and he plucked a thorn from that nearby plant and he poked that insect. 70 lives later, that insect with Arjun is settling his scores with Bhishma. You may believe or may not believe this, but the point to understand here is that law of karma doesn't escape. Nobody escapes law of karma. Results will come. No doubt in that. So the doer of the action is the experiencer of the result. And one who understands this very clearly will also understand that this law makes me not only very responsible, but my entire future is dependent on this. That I am facing in this life my own karmas of the past. So whatever I do now is going to determine my future, because the results will come. It may be immediate future, just next moment, or maybe a few moments later, or a few days, months, weeks, years, anytime. But it will be my future. So once I understand this, that yesterday's karma is today's destiny. Today's karma will create tomorrow's destiny. And so those who understand that, again, learn to act very responsibly and learn to align themselves with the beauty of this karma. Law number 5 says that every action will produce two types of results. One is a visible result, another is an invisible result. Generally we see only the visible result. The visible result is at the body, mind and intellect level. So pleasure or pain is a visible result. Happiness or sorrow at the mind level, and success or failure at the intellectual level. These are visible results tangible. But there is one invisible result, which is the impression that is created in our mind. So first time I drink coffee, at the physical level there is some experience. If I enjoy it, it is pleasure. If I don't, I don't like it. If somebody who loves me has brought it, then there's some emotional satisfaction. If I had a desire in intellectual level that I must taste Starbucks coffee, and that got fulfilled, so I feel happy. This is a visible result. But there is an invisible result that action will produce on my own mind, which is an impression that I like coffee or I don't like coffee. Now that is going to create the future. That impression will create the next consequence of it. Maybe in the form of a desire, if I like it, and maybe in the form of an aversion, if somebody else brings a coffee again, no, I don't want it. So it creates that seed. In quantum physics, they call this as the archetypes. That our behavior is determined by the archetypes. And these archetypes are there which create the desire, and the different pattern in this world is created because of that archetypes. So the vasanas or the impressions and repeated impressions on the mind, they make it very strong vasana. So in Vedanta we say the samskar, when it is repeated, becomes a vasana, a strong channel through which the desires and thoughts will flow. In neuroscience they call this as, literally they call it as thought channels. So the brain creates, the neurons, they fire in a specific way and they create the thought channel. So the mind will flow in that direction only. And they have a concept called neuroplasticity. So if you don't encourage a certain behavior, so if there is a habit which has been formed, and if I don't encourage that habit, after some time there will be new set of pathways which will be formed in the brain. So brain is literally like plastic, you can mold it. That's the power of free will. That I may have been what I have been till yesterday, but if I use my Purushartha today, I can completely change. So every karma will produce a visible result and invisible result. And that's why they say that if you do something for 21 days, it will become a habit. Because repeatedly I am enforcing that same pattern of behavior, it will get imprinted even on the brain physically. The neurons will fire in that same thought channels, same channels, and so those experiences one will have. Why is this important to know? Is because when I am acting in this world, while I am exhausting my prarabdha karma, I am acting, so I am creating new impressions. That is called as the agami karma. So my future karma I am creating. The new patterns for my desires, thoughts, action, results I am creating. Through every action that I am doing, I am creating the seed for the next action, which is the impression. And this cycle is what we call the cycle of karma. And what is that cycle is this. If you understand this cycle, a lot of Vedanta one has understood. That impressions create desires in our mind, intellect. Desires create thoughts and feelings. Thoughts create the actions. Action creates the results. And results further create impressions. So this cycle goes on. And every impression will create further desires. To experience the result of that desire, I have to ensure that I take a body. So again and again I am born. So one says punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam. Again and again one is born, and again one comes into the womb. How long will this process go on? That even when I am doing this process, no matter how much I do in this world, I still feel incomplete. In corporate world, they have a nice saying for that. In the world of rat race, even if you win, you still remain a rat, always afraid of the cat hiding below the mat. And always remain. How much ever I do anything, how much achievement I have, success I have, name, fame, anything, I will remain incomplete. And there will be impression, desire, thoughts, and I keep coming back again and again. So if one thinks carefully, do we really want to come back again? One thought makes me really seek moksha. I don't want to go to school again. If I have to come back, I have to again go to school. I have come out of that system, thank God. Again go back to school. And now childhood days are also gone. Because now we have mother toddler class onwards, 6 months onwards, training starts. So no free time. So those people who think they understand that this is the law of karma, this is how it is functioning. Now how to get out of this cycle? Getting out of the cycle doesn't mean that I will never be born again. The problem is not birth and death actually. Problem is that I don't know who I am. And so I feel I am incomplete and then I am living in this world as an incomplete entity. I don't know my nature as consciousness. That knowledge is the solution actually. And with that knowledge, even if birth happens again, there is no problem. Problem is that I don't have the right knowledge. So moksha is not what Gurudev used to say, beautiful definition. Nowhere I have read this kind of a definition. Moksha is not freedom from action. Moksha is freedom in action. That how to act here while I am living in such a way that action doesn't bind me. That I don't create further impressions which create desire, thought. Those agitations don't come. So the key for this is the 6th law. And that is the motive of the action determines the merit of the action or the demerit of the action. A selfish motive strengthens the sense of ego and individuality. And a selfless motive expands and a person's ego becomes lesser and lesser. And so the key is this law actually. How to get out of this cycle of karma. That while I am acting, I act in such a way that existing karmas of the past, they get exhausted and no new karmas I create. As long as I have a selfish desire in my mind, it will create some impression, no doubt in that. The example Gurudev used to give was of a camera. So in the camera, the film which is put inside, some of you know that there used to be a film in a camera earlier. Nowadays, people may not know because they use digital camera and they only see one micro SD card. So there used to be a film. And whenever that shutter gets, you click and the shutter opens, whatever is in front of it will get imprinted on that film. In that same way, the mind which has the selfishness, ego, etc. is like that film. Anything that it does, as soon as an action is done, impression is created. But suppose you expose that film and then you use that film, will anything happen? Nothing happens. No picture will fall, no impression, nothing will happen. Same way, we have to expose that mind away to the higher, to a selfless cause. So the same work that I am doing, I can do it with the selfless attitude. I don't have to go anywhere else. If I am cooking in the house, I can do it for the well-being of my family and really feel that this is dedicated to my family and do it. Now Valentine's Day is coming, so a lot of men and husbands are learning to cook, to express their love for their wives. On Facebook it is there, you see so many. So if I am doing that cooking, it is if I dedicate it for my family. If I am working in a company, I dedicate it for the purpose of the company, for the well-being of the society. If I am doing some work, even if I am studying as a student, I can think that how will I be able to contribute to my country. Anything that helps me to rise above the ego helps me to become selfless. The vision expands and the highest being I am doing this for the Lord. That sense of dedicated action is called Karma Yoga and that unites me with my own divine self. So Karma Yoga is not just an action, special action. Karma Yoga is in the attitude that with what bhav am I doing this? Am I doing this only for myself? Can I do it with complete selflessness for dedicating it to either somebody else or to a particular field or to a particular country or for people, family, any altar? Our Puja Guruji, Swami Tejomayananji, he is the present head of Chinmaya Mission. He says a very nice statement. He says an altar in life alters your life. ALTAR, altar. in life alters, A-L-T-E-R. An altar in life alters our life. What is that altar to which I am dedicated? To which all my actions are dedicated. When I live in that way, the same action, instead of binding me, will become a means of exhausting the past karma, and new karma doesn't come out. That's why in the Gita the Lord says to Arjun, Tato yuddhaya yujyasva. Arjun, you fight this war not for the sake of personal hatred and revenge, but because that is your duty to protect dharma. For the society you have to do this. Like a doctor has to cut a cancerous growth in the body and amputate that part. So you do this, and if you do this, yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsasi, you will not incur sin. Because you are not killing, otherwise generally killing will incur a sin, meaning a negative karma. But you do it for the sake of the society, where you have nothing personal in it, you will not incur a negative karma at all. That philosophy if I learn, love for the sake of love, work for the sake of work, exercise for the sake of exercise, how much freedom. We exercise because I have to lose 3 kilos of weight and somebody must compliment me now. And if nobody compliments, I feel what a waste. I mean, it's a natural desire that anybody may have, but I can rise above some of these when I understand the higher way of living. So selflessness, that is the key. The selfish motive strengthens the I and mind, and the selfless motive reduces that. And hence a person who understands this can liberate oneself from this entire cycle of karma. And so these three aspects we saw till now, that total karma of my past, whatever I have done in the earlier human lives, is the sanchit karma. So if we give mathematical example, let us say 20 lakh is my karma. To exhaust some 3 lakh karmas, I have taken a body. That is my destiny. Till that destiny is not over, till that 3 lakh karmas are not exhausted, the body will continue to live. Nobody can drop that body. Even if one attempts suicide or anything can happen. Nothing will happen to that life till that karma is not over. Body may get, it may get damaged or those things may happen, but that person will still live. Sometimes even in a state of coma one may live for many, many days. Because some karma one has to exhaust. One is doing it. When that 3 lakh karmas are being exhausted, while exhausting those 3 lakhs, I am creating another 5 lakhs more. So instead of my net balance being 17 lakhs at the end of my one birth, now my net balance is 22 lakhs. So those who say we came empty-handed and we went empty-handed, that's at the external level we may have come empty-handed, going empty-handed. But we come with a lot of baggage and we collect more baggage and go. One has to understand, once one understands some of these things, and the whole attitude to life will change. That I have the freedom, not only I have the freedom to act, but I have the freedom to get out of action. Actually, that's the purpose of karma. Gurudev used to say, act to become actionless. Work to go beyond work. Meditate to become the meditated. So when I act, make me act in such a way that I can experience that actionless presence within my own heart, which is that quantum consciousness, what we call, which is our true nature. And so karma, when I understand very well, example given is that we all have this free will. Because we have this human body, I can take charge of my life, I can do anything that I want with my life. If I understand these 3 laws, these 6 laws of karma, that how do I act in this world, such that I can create my own destiny. Because yesterday's karma is today's free will. Yesterday's free will is today's karma. And today's karma or free will be tomorrow's destiny. So all of us have this capacity to create our own future. Even if that 3 lakh karma is destined, how I face that 3 lakh karma is in my hands. Completely. And each moment of that I am facing, I can even change that entire response to that what is happening in my life because of the past. That's why Gurudev's famous quote is, what we meet in life is fate, but how we meet it is free will. One of my favorite pages is this. If your father is poor, it is your fate. But if your father-in-law is poor, it is your foolishness. So what we meet is fate, but how we meet it is our free will completely. This much I understand. I stop blaming anybody or anything. Stop victimizing myself. Stop feeling without this I can't be happy, this happened to me, that happened to me. How much of time and energy we spend in this victimization mode? Feeling helpless, hapless, and then we become dependent and then become more helpless because of that. Arjuna was doing that. Blaming everything. In the whole first chapter, if you see, he continuously keeps blaming everything else. And Shri Krishna gives him one whip in the beginning of the second chapter. Shudram Hridaya Daurbalyam. This is the weakness of your heart, Arjuna. Wake up. Don't blame the circumstances. They are the same for everybody. Why are you lamenting here? Because you are attached. You are weak. So if I realize this power that I have, I can start exercising. In small ways I can exercise. And it may be difficult because the habit is very strong. So many times one feels that the fate is overpowering. But actually if we think about it, there is nothing called fate. Why? Because yesterday's free will is today's fate. Today's free will be tomorrow's fate. So what is more powerful, fate or free will? Fate is the effect, free will is the cause. So if free will is the cause is always greater than the effect. So no matter what I have been till yesterday, that power to change, that is why it is called Purushartha. Purushartha means the self-effort. That I can change my life completely. And haven't we seen examples of so many people who have been able to do that? If you read the life of Steve Jobs, what all he went through in his life. For his own company which he founded, he was thrown out of that. He was born he was orphaned in the childhood. So many things he went through. But how we came out of that? Dr. Kalam, one of the very beautiful statements of Dr. Kalam. So he wanted to become a pilot and he could not become a pilot. He could not clear a vision test and he was very disappointed. And he went to meet Swami Shivanandaji because in Dehradun was his interview, and then he came down to Rishikesh. And then he saw the Divine Life Society, so he went. And at the end of the satsang, when he went to meet Swamiji, Swamiji asked him, young man, what has happened? Why are you so sad? So he explained everything. I am sad because I couldn't become a pilot and I couldn't clear the vision test and it was the dream of my life and everything he said. So Shivanandaji told him two things. So what if you couldn't become a pilot? Maybe there are greater things in store for you. And then the second thing he quoted from Tirukkural. Tirukkural is a great Tamil composition by a saint called Tiruvalluvar. So he quoted that Tirukkural and he said in that Tiruvalluvar says that defeat the defeatist in you. In all of us there is a defeatist which keeps telling us, you are not capable, you are not fit. You can't do this, you can't do that. It keeps on pulling us down. I have to defeat that defeatist. Many examples like that. People who have taken charge of their life and refuse to feel victimized. Karma actually makes me take charge of my life. Many people think that karma makes me totally without any enthusiasm, unenthusiastic, completely, that whatever has to happen anyway will happen, it's all destiny, what to do. No, it is not like that. It is a law which is to make us stronger. And it is a fact which is operating. We see in our life so many examples of that. And so a very beautiful line I came across which said that destiny is not in the lines of your hand but in the grasp of your palm. That how do I grasp this present moment? That will create my destiny. And if I understand that very well, I will stop cribbing, complaining. One of the definitions of an atheist is one who cribs, complains and cries is an atheist. Why? Because if there is this power that already is there and the Lord has given me this power, why am I cribbing and complaining? Let me use that power and make my life. In the language of devotion, if I understand that the Lord is always there with me, why do I have to cry? If I feel that the Lord is there and still I keep complaining and crying, that means I do not have acceptance and I am not able to take charge of my life. And so this law of karma, so when we speak about does God control? No, the Lord does not control. The Lord has created a system and in that system one keeps working. So at this level of understanding, we have to understand that if there are certain things that I am not able to achieve, it is not because some God up there is putting obstacles. It is just that some karma which I have done in the past is not allowing the present action to happen smoothly. If that gets nullified, it will go ahead. So the obstacles should not create disappointment in me. It should only create more enthusiasm to work harder. And of course a lot of other factors determine that, whether it is appropriate or should I reevaluate my course of life. All those will matter. Not that obstinately I keep going on and on and on. But many places this happens, that when certain things don't happen the way we want, we immediately feel that this was not destined to be, maybe I am not meant for this, and we start imagining. But if that's very important to me, it's in my priority, I should keep putting that effort and it will manifest. So obstacles only indicate the lack of adequate free will or self-effort. Keep putting the effort. Example given here is that if a nail is hammered into the wall many years ago, and now you want to repaint the wall, now you want to pull that nail out, with what force it has been hammered inside, and for so many years it has been there, so with a force lesser than that, if I try to pull, it will not come out. I have to put much more force. So if it doesn't come out, will I say that okay, the wall is creating some obstacle? No, I will put more force. Same way, I have to keep putting that effort. Things will happen. And again remembering the law of karma, that results are governed by time and cosmic laws. When I keep doing my karma, the result will come. With that faith I must do that. So the Lord does not do micromanagement at all. The Lord does set up the laws, and according to the system, the laws keep functioning and the results keep coming, and we all have the free will to choose how to do, what to do, when to do, all that. Complete free will we have. Till now, what we have spoken, is that clear to all of us? Now, if we want to go a little deeper, are we ready? We are going to take a leap. So, if we are ready to go deeper, let's understand this. That there are 4 levels in our life. Tamasic, Rajasic, Sattvic, and beyond that. 4 levels. These are the 3 states of the mind. Tamasic is where laziness is there, dullness is there, procrastination, ignorance, carelessness. That is the tamasic state of mind. Rajasic state of mind is when there is desire, attachment, ambition, achievement, hard work, all that. Rajasic state of mind. Sattvic state of mind is peace, calmness, balance, creativity, knowledge, love, all that. And then the 4th is that which is beyond the mind, beyond the 3 states, where one is in that state of being or consciousness. So when the mind is in a tamasic state, the person is told that arise, awake, you have to create your own destiny, you must make your own life, make a mark, don't waste this human birth. And the example given for that person is the boat and the motor. So there is a river which is flowing very fast. Suppose the river is flowing at maybe 12 kilometers an hour. And there is a boat kept in that river. Because of the speed of the river flowing down, the boat will also flow down at the same speed, 12 kilometers per hour. If the boat should not flow down, what has to be done? The motor which is fixed in the boat must produce that speed of 12 kilometers per hour so that it will stay stationary, it will not go down. But if the boat has to go upstream in a river which is flowing down, then the motor must produce that speed which is more than 12 kilometers. So if it produces 15 or 20, then it will go up by 3 or 8 kilometers. That is called going against the flow. So there is a tamasic tendency in the mind whereby I am flowing down into laziness, lethargy, inertia. So one says, come on, have a goal in life, wake up, your life should be in your control, and one starts doing that. Starts working for a goal and starts harnessing one's potential. When one comes out of that state, one will be attached to that result. So that attachment will produce anxiety, which will hamper the performance. So to that person it is said that you have the freedom to act, no doubt in that, and put your best in that, but remember that results are not in your control. Results come by so many laws. So the example given for that is the rope and the cow. So there is a cow which is tied to a tree with a long rope. Now when the cow is tied with a long rope, the cow is free. So it can move about, but its freedom is limited by what? Length of the rope. Same way, we all have free will. We all have control. We all can choose at the action level what to do, how to do, everything. But the results are not in our control. There is a limited freedom. Now the person who understands till this much is working hard, achieving a result, learning to do it selflessly for a higher purpose. That person has come into a sattvic state. To that person who is ready to go beyond the sense of ego, to that person it is said, remember, everything is pre-planned. That there is a cosmic intelligence and each and everything is pre-planned. Now when we hear this, suddenly we may feel, what is this? Till now we saw everything is in my control. Now, everything is pre-planned. This is a very different level of surrender. Only a mind which is very sattvic will even be able to understand that. That there is a fact that the predestination is a fact. Predetermination is a fact. That each and every aspect is already predetermined. That this will happen in this way. But because we live at this level of this consciousness, this ego, we are not able to live at that higher level from where we see the complete picture. From the level of Ishvara, everything is predetermined already. Because Ishvara knows what is going to happen, when, how. That's why Ishvara is called omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. Yesterday we saw that. As a totality, it knows. So if I lift myself to the level of totality, I can also understand that each and everything is pre-planned. What we try to do is, from remaining at our individual level, then we try to think that everything is predetermined, then we get confused. Because we don't know what to do after that. The example will make this clear. There is a movie which has been made. When you are sitting and watching the movie, so now this movie on Gurudev which we have made, The Quest. So when you sit and watch that movie, what do you feel? The characters are making all the choices. Each and every character in that, the hero and the heroine and whoever is there, all of them are apparently making the choices. But are they free to choose? Everything is scripted or not? The director knows. And in the example of the movie, the director will, if the actor tries to do his own acting or change the dialogue, the director will say, cut. That's a limitation of example. Here, same way. From the highest level, from the level of totality, if we see, the totality is aware of everything that is happening and is going to happen. And even from science level, if you see, they will speak of this now. That time, past, present and future, we are watching it like this, that present alone is real to us now. But past and future also will be real to us if we lift ourselves above this ego level of consciousness. So Einstein's relativity theory also speaks about it quite a lot. And the implications of the relativity theory are this, that time in terms of past, present and future is divided by us. Actually it is not like that. It is one continuum. And all are real. And so many movies also which have come about time travel and time machine and all those things. So from the level of totality, if we see, it is a fact that everything is predetermined by whom? Remember, by all the jivas, what they have done individually, the free will that they have exercised is creating all those patterns by which the whole thing is predetermined. So that is one way to understand that there is a predetermination level which works. And so a mind which is ready for this will live in complete surrender. It will not become actionless, it will not become confused. The person will do what one has to do, but the bhav will be that I am only an instrument, the doer is the Lord. That's what the Lord says to Arjun in the Gita in the 11th chapter, where he tells Arjun, Rite pitvam na bhavanti sarve. Even without you fighting, none of these people will remain, Arjun. Maya eva nihata purvam eva. I have already killed them because their karma is such that they deserve this result. So if you are not going to be there, somebody else will be there to wipe them out. Nimitta matram bhava sarve sachin. You just be an instrument. So at our level, to understand this, to remain at this higher level, is to do what I have to do with the best of my intention, with the attitude that I am only an instrument. That way when I act, I let go of the ego also. So selfless way of acting helps me to reduce the karma. So the equation of karma, if you see, karma is equal to action done with BMI plus intention plus doership, right? So intention becomes selfless, the impressions become lesser and lesser. And when the doership goes away, that I am not the doer, the Lord is the doer, I am only an instrument, then I do not face the result of that karma. Because it's not my karma. Example that Gurudev used to give is, if a boss is dictating a letter and the stenographer is writing the entire letter, and she writes it in shorthand, goes, types it up, makes the whole thing and brings it for the boss, the signature is done by whom? The boss. So the consequences of that letter will be faced by whom? Boss, because he is the real doer. The action may be done by this stenographer. Another example given is that in the train, if one is going in the train, if one says that the minimum luggage allowed is only 20 kilos, so the rest 20 kilos I am going to put on my head and go, that is foolishness. The train is carrying everything. Right? Same way we are doing in this life. That I am carrying the burden of doership when the fact is I am an instrument. And the karma is actually happening through me. So this is a higher level of understanding where predetermination works. And those who live at this level, they are able to let go of the ego and they get established in that consciousness which is beyond fate and beyond free will. So these are 4 different levels, and how I rise above them, that is up to me and my evolution. So whether I accept it or not, predetermination is actually a fact. I only have to lift myself from tamasic to rajasic to sattvic level, and then to go beyond that. So at one level, does God control? No, God doesn't control anything. He gives us the freedom and it works. And that's a relevant level, there is no doubt in that. But at a higher level, yes, everything is predetermined. So how do I live in this world? Depending on my level, I have to live in this world. If I want to balance, there is a beautiful balance in these two also. That I act with the best of my intention. And when that action is over, whatever result comes, I learn to accept, and I also know that whatever the way I acted was predetermined by my own karma or by the Lord. Let it happen. So I don't hold myself responsible or beat myself up for it. Because what had to happen only happened. With the best of intention, I made the choice, and having made the choice, I should know that the choice was destined. So in the beginning, I asked you 3 questions. That, are you here by choice, or are you here because you feel it is destined, or are you here because you feel that the choice also is destined? So all the 3 are true. We are here because of choice, we are here because of destiny, which is my own past karma, and we are here because that choice was also destined. It's up to me at which level I identify and live. But what is important is I must maintain consistency of the levels. I cannot go home now and pick a fight with my brother and say, this fight was destined. If I live consistently at a level of destiny, or I live at the level of self-effort completely. Can't shift unnecessarily. So this is what is the understanding of does God control. In one way, yes. In one way, no. It depends on us and how do we live. So that's where we stop for now. For those of you who are new, we have our website chinmaymission.com, which will give you more details about the work of the mission and the activities, etc. And specifically, if you want, there are a lot of YouTube talks and Facebook posts and updates and podcasts, audio talks, etc., which will be available on my website swatmananda.com. We will see a small video. We spoke about this dedicating our work to a higher purpose. This year is Swami Chinmayanandaji's birth centenary year, as I had said yesterday. So we have a project called Transforming Indians to Transform India, where we brought out a book on 7 levels of transformation. And we are doing workshops in various schools and colleges on physical, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, cultural, patriotic and universal transformation. And these workshops are being done by many trainers who are like all of you. And our sankalpa, the vision behind this whole movement is I transform, India transforms. My transformation transforms the nation. And so this was based on Swami Chinmayanandaji's vision, where he spoke about this in the UN, and he gave this message that through individual perfection, world perfection is possible. So as a tribute to him and as a tribute to our country, to empower the youth of our country, we have this whole movement. And we have been doing workshops across the country. In Mumbai especially, we have done about 300 workshops so far. And there is a good team of trainers, and we want more people to join us because we want to do more than 1,000 such workshops. And so here is a small video of the workshops that we are doing. Please have a look. Audio.
facing. Children are undergoing depression, they are committing suicide. We want the future citizens to be emotionally strong. Today you have learned how to control your emotions, how to be mentally strong in all situations. Understood? Education is, only degrees are not important nowadays. You go with PhD, you will not get a job. A person with BCom immediately gets higher salary than him because he is good at communication skills. His EQ is strong, not IQ. Emotional quotient is strong. They are doing it free of charge. Society is giving you so much, it is your duty to give back to the society. And that is what they are doing. After 5-10 years, when you are capable, you should also do such sessions. The book which is given to you is the best book today's time. It is being given to you free of cost. Some good person has sponsored it.
So this movement is aimed at basically empowering the youth, and there are a few things that you can help us to do. One is that if you like to be a trainer, you can give your names at the counter. We are having training workshops in February where we will be training people in emotional, patriotic, intellectual transformation. To begin with these 3, and then other 4 we will take up in some time. So where you get trained and then you can go to the schools and colleges and conduct these workshops. Just recently, like today, we have concluded all the 7 levels for 7th, 8th and 9th standard in the GD Somani school, and for all the 3 sections. So more than about 40 workshops we just finished today. And the response has been very nice from those children and the students and the teachers and the principal himself. And so we want to take this to as many students and youngsters as possible, because we believe that that's where the change will come about from. So one is you can become a trainer, and interested people who want to become a trainer, please give your names and we will contact you when we have the training in February end. Second is you can also help us to host these workshops. So it can be done not only in schools, colleges, it can also be done in your own societies, in Rotary clubs, even in any other place. In your own companies, corporate places, everywhere. Third, if you feel that you would like to sponsor a book, a particular person's 7 levels of workshops, so for ₹100 you can sponsor 7 workshops with a book for 1 child. And so if you feel inspired, you are welcome, because all these things happen free of cost. Neither the school nor the individual, nobody contributes. The society supports it and we give it to the society back. And so these are 3 different ways in which you can contribute to this national movement. You all must have got this envelope. This is called the Guru Dakshina envelope. You can write your name, address, etc. so you get a receipt. And if you feel inspired by these 3 days talks and you would like this knowledge to go to more and more people, whatever best you can offer, it's up to you. There is no compulsion. How many of you here get our monthly magazine called Chinmay Sandesh? So if you like, you can become a member where this magazine would come to you every month with all programs and articles, etc. There is also art, magazines which are there for the children and for the youth, which is Bal Vihar and Chinmay Udghosh. And these are done in a way in which they could understand in the inspiring way for that age group. So there is Bal Vihar, there is Udghosh, and there is Tapovan Prasad. And we also have courses, correspondence courses. So if you feel that you would like to study Vedanta systematically, we have a basic Vedanta course, we have advanced Vedanta course, and we have a Bhagavad Gita course. All these are correspondence courses, so either by email or by snail mail, you will get 2 lessons every month and you study them. There is a questionnaire, you answer it and send it back. They will send the next set of 2 lessons and evaluate your answer sheet. So over a period of 12 months to 18 months, you can study Vedanta systematically. So all these options are there. You can take some time and you can, at the end of this program, we will have this Guru Dakshina ceremony where you can contribute and take a prasad.